Hey everybody! Welcome to the Beantown Beatdown.
Matthew Barnes.
Gabe Shamus.
Yeah, we're back. This is our first episode on Tuesday. Yeah, weekly episode. Well, not so weekly. I mean, 3 episodes a month.
Right, exactly. So
yep.
Trashy Tuesdays from now on, y'all.
Trashy Tuesday.
I'm trying to think of a party, type way of saying it.
Oh, Trashy Tuesdays. That should be the hashtag.
Trashy Tuesday. Actually, that will be our hashtag now. We were trying to think of a third hashtag. Let's do it.
Oh, right. I'm used to doing it the other way.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
I'm trying to like this. I think it's easier when you do it on your own.
Yeah, of course. And before we begin, first and foremost, congratulations to our New England Patriots.
Woo-hoo!
First game of the season, and they smoked the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hell yeah. Here, cheers on that.
Yeah, cheers on that, man. Steelers, They got smoked quicker than a pack of Virginia Slims in a women's prison.
Nice.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Cheers on that.
Nice. It's just for those that are just joining in or whatever. This is just like the old days. We always knock down a few cold ones and talk about fights and sports news.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And first and foremost, gonna get right into it. Big news: Cyborg has entered Bellator. That's right. At one time, the baddest woman on the planet, former UFC featherweight champion, women's featherweight champion, now signs with Bellator. She announced it on her Instagram page, and of course, Bellator officially announced it that she has entered Bellator. Not too surprised about this. I said that, because we talked about it in one of our last episode. I said she was either going to wind up in ONE FC or Bellator because not only can she do MMA, but she can also do kickboxing. So, I mean, she says that she wants to take the women's featherweight title in Bellator, but who knows? I mean, she might get talked into a kickboxing match. I mean, I don't know. I mean.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to see. We'll have to see as it goes on, and yeah, it's always interesting because UFC was the main game in town, and so now it's always interesting when one of their
it still is. I mean, Khabib just want to fight over the weekend, so
yeah, true.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, now this is a big name for them, for Bellator to get, and so now it is. I'm sure it's going to be shifting the dynamic a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, Cyborg has the opportunity to become the first woman to win the featherweight title in different MMA organizations. She won it in Strikeforce. She won it in Invicta FC, which was the all women's promotion that was under the UFC, and then she won it in the UFC, and now she can win it in Bellator.
Yep, indeed. So yeah, that would be a triple threat? That'd be a quadruple threat right there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I hearken this thing right now with MMA. It's just like all the competition right now, all the big leagues. It's almost like professional wrestling, in the 90s,
Right.
Like there was we had WWF, there was WCW, and then there was ECW, those were like the 3 big name organizations in the 90s.
Right, the big 3.
Yeah, the big 3. And now with MMA, well, MMA sort of had that in the late 2000s when it was becoming big, even though Pride was going out of business.
Yeah.
There was like IFL, there was Bodog, and and there was Elite XC, and of course Strikeforce, and now the 3 big organizations. Also, World Extreme Cage Fighting, gotta throw that in there as well. Before they got gobbled up by UFC. But now it's we have UFC, we have Bellator, we have ONE FC, there's PFL, Professional Fighting League, and there's also Ryzen.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't even heard of those last 2.
Really? You never heard of Ryzen?
No, not really.
Oh,
I'm just a casual fan, like we've talked about on the show.
right. I keep forgetting that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, it's good to know. It's good to know that all these, it's this new competition. All these, other organizations, and like you said, it does seem like, pro wrestling in the '90s.
Well, yeah, I mean, and even right now, there's sort of this booming period of pro wrestling right now, where pro wrestling starting to come back on television. There's starting to be more shows for pro wrestling now, because WWE, they have Monday Night Raw, SmackDown's moving to Fox on Friday nights. We've talked about that before in the past. Wednesday night, AEW, All Elite Wrestling. They're going to be on Wednesday nights at 8, in October, the same time as WWE's NXT.
Okay, I gotcha.
And then there's Women of Wrestling on Friday nights on Access TV, and then there's New Japan Pro Wrestling on Access TV as well.
Wow, yeah.
And of course there's MLW. MLW doesn't have a big major television deal, but also when you and I were doing ringside, we saw the commercial promo for like NWA TV.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins. Yeah, bringing back the old school studio television wrestling, from the NWA back in the '70s and the '80s.
Yeah, who else to do it but someone who was so big in the music scene in the '80s, '90s.
Well, he was big in the '90s, but
he
grew up a wrestling fan watching NWA wrestling.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and so it's kind of a big booming thing. It's like it's and I've heard Jason Solmonster talk about this on his podcast too. It's like it'll make the name National Wrestling Alliance mean something again, even though WWE has most of the libraries, video libraries and stuff, but it'll make it mean something to where it's like, oh, we recognize the name now, but not to where it was in the '80s and '70s. So like it'll never be like that, because also television is different, and how you do a television. How you do a wrestling TV show is different nowadays,
right, exactly.
And stuff, and also, I've said this. I've talked about this before, and we've talked about it before. Like, ratings for pro wrestling will never be back to what it was when we were growing up. It's just it's a different medium. There's too much competition. There's now there's a lot more reality shows. There's DVRs, and stuff like that.
Right. I was gonna say, as soon as you were done with this, I was curious to get your take. So what do you with all these new or re up and coming organizations? Do you believe that there is more fighting organizations now than ever before?
Fighting. Okay, back to combat sports. I think there sort of is now. I mean, like, there's always going to be like the minor league ones, because there are ones that are, like on Access TV, they have they have a few ones that are under the UFC banner, like the ones that are, for fighters who are trying to get into the UFC and stuff like that.
Okay.
And, because there's always going to be those ones around. It's, because some of them don't want to, try to compete with the UFC, or want to, they don't want to compete. They want to, be an alternative. They want to be like, okay, we're a small organization. We're not going to get any bigger, and we don't want to. We don't want to get any bigger.
Right. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. So, but I mean, I guess the thing is, I haven't heard of all these different names back then. Again, I'm only a casual fan, and maybe I just, wasn't in that world as much. But I feel like I have not heard of all these different names as there are now.
Yeah, but it's also a matter of what TV deal they land to. I mean, PFL is on ESPN, but then again, so is the UFC, and of course, it's nowadays. It's like whenever UFC lands a TV deal, it's always going to be big and all that. And then you got Bellator that's on that's on the Paramount Network, and Paramount Network, they're doing good with, Bar Rescue and Lip Sync and that stuff. And then ONE FC, I heard ONE FC was on TNT, but that's like on it's on at different times, so it's like yeah, so they don't really have a good TV deal, but they do good pay-per-views. Their pay-per-views are always good, and and some of their content is mostly on their YouTube channels, so you can watch some of their fights for free on there.
Right. But I'm just saying. So you said that there's always been small organizations or whatever, or training, type organizations. But like I'm just trying to get at has there been more, is there more organizations overall nowadays?
Yeah, overall, yeah. I mean, there's still ones like King of the Cage, like that used to be so big in the early to mid 2000s, because it was like, MMA wasn't all legalized in different states, and it was, it was still that cult following thing. It was at biker rallies and stuff like that. I mean, King of the Cage is still around, but it's like it's not like what it used to be.
What it was. Yeah. Sometimes being underground, is actually the brand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's also other organizations like Super Fight. Well, I don't know if Super Fight League is still around, but if they are, it's like it's also a matter of what TV deal you get to, because like sometimes you can get a TV deal on a channel that nobody watches, or it's on a different cable channel or whatever. So it's like for example, like I still follow UFC, but it's like I don't watch the fights on ESPN because like I don't have ESPN.
Gotcha.
But I can still watch a pay-per-view though.
If
I get a chance.
Totally.
All
right. So I guess that.
Yep. And now we're gonna get into some boxing news. Okay.
Since we don't have like titles taking over the screen for nowadays, or I gotta try and do the segment break somehow.
Yeah, that's true. Well, first and foremost, Andy Ruiz Jr. and Anthony Joshua. The rematch is set for December in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and there was a lot of negotiations on where the rematch was going to take place. I mean, Andy was actually on Joe Rogan's podcast not too long ago. He was talking about how like he wanted to run it back at Madison Square Garden, and I guess they came to an agreement that they're going to do it in Saudi Arabia now.
Wow, I mean, how common is that though?
Yeah, well, there could also be a lot of controversy because, like, Saudi Arabia is still, like, still in hot water with the Americans after what happened to that reporter. And,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and even WWE was getting a lot of shit from it when they did, like, their super shows in Saudi Arabia. But my thing on
they had been doing that.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like, my thing on it is those people who killed those terrorists, who killed the reporter, those were extreme terrorists, and also there's some people who had nothing to do with that. They're like, hey, listen, we had nothing to do with that. We're not, we're not killers. We don't support terrorism.
Right.
So it's like you can't really punish them.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's true. The people in those countries, yes. But let's be clear that there's a lot of evidence that was actually supported by the prince. So it's not like that was an outside, that wasn't necessarily an outside group. That was supported by the prince. So there is reason to say that government, whatever. But you're right that the people setting up those fights are not involved with the government there. So
yeah, exactly.
So, yeah,
and also the other thing is that the heavyweight championship of the world is now back, in the main. Well, not so much back in the mainstream, but now it's like back on people's minds in the world of boxing, because now it's taking place in a foreign country. Like a la, George Foreman and Muhammad Ali, the Rumble in the Jungle, or when Mike Tyson lost to Buster Douglas in 90 in Tokyo, or when Max Lewis lost to Hasim Rahman in Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like because boxing, like they don't do too many overseas events. I mean, Manny Pacquiao has done some, in Macau and stuff, but for the most part, they don't really go overseas that much.
Right, and so I was gonna say, it's good that they did it in all those places, because like if you're going to say, championship of the world, then it should actually mean that. I was, for as an outside observer, I always thought when they said championship of the world, they mean America and Europe. like you should actually mean championship of the world if you're gonna say of the world. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's also face it. I mean, I understand why more fights take place in terms of boxing, like why it takes place in like Las Vegas, New York, and it's like there's money there, especially in Vegas, the casinos. But when you look at Macau, I mean, Macau is the Las Vegas of China. Actually, 1 year. As a matter of fact, for 1 year, they pulled in more money than Las Vegas.
Really?
Yeah, and then Montreal, Canada, there's a lot of casinos there. That's the Las Vegas of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, why not capitalize on it?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, like I said, and diversify. Yep. Indeed. And especially if you are going to say of the world, it should mean it. And so, that is an interesting point. And then, of course, you said Japan. You said, Africa. That's where it's like really, expanding and broadening. And that's like, and it's good that they went to Africa, because again, if you're going to say the world, that's one of the major continents, of the world, and a lot of people don't actually go there. So.
Yeah, of course. And also some other boxing news. And Mikey Garcia is in talks to fight Manny Pacquiao. Nothing has been officially set yet, but the two camps are in talks.
Okay.
And I say if this fight does happen, then I would say that this could be Mikey Garcia's last shot at the welterweight title, because he went from super lightweight to welterweight to fight Errol Spence, and Errol Spence beat him.
Right.
And now he's fighting against Manny Pacquiao. I mean, and Manny Pacquiao, he's still on his game as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, I mean, even though I think that Manny Pacquiao should wait for the winner of Porter versus Spence, I mean, to fight, but if he's getting an offer to fight Mikey Garcia, I mean,
go for it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, although I do really want to see like a real undisputed welterweight champion, because right now we got Porter, WBC champion, WBA champion is Pacquiao, IBF champion is Spence, and the WBO champion is Terrence Crawford. It's like I want there to be like one champion. I want to see more unification title fights.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. And also, and some other boxing news. Peter Quillen and Alfredo Angulo will fight next weekend on Fox Sports 1. Yep, and I think this is Angula's last chance to get a title shot.
Oh, yeah?
Well, yeah, because he's been, it's kind of been win-loss, especially after the Canelo fight and the Aris De Lara fight. Mm-hmm. And he's going up against Peter Quillen, who's a former WBO middleweight champion, and this fight is being fought at super middleweight. So I say if Angulo wins this fight, then he gets back in the title picture. But if not, then I think it's really time for him to retire, because also, he's really one of those Mexican fighters that will take two punches just to land one. I mean, if you ever see his face when he, in boxing matches, his face gets all swollen up and shit like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and it's like his family must not like that at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Peter Quillen, he's got power. He's got speed and he's got power, man. He's when I was watching him earlier, in his career when he was undefeated and stuff before he lost to Danny Jacobs, I was like, man, this guy is like the second coming of Roy Jones Jr.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot on the show about about kind of the ups and downs, of fighters' careers, and and sometimes, like I said, we talk about their families and whatnot. Something I am going to be talking about more on the show and in my my segments is actually the I think I mentioned this once before, the show Riverdale. This is going to sound completely random, but
stay out of Riverdale.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, but it's come very far since the Simpsons days. Yeah. Anyway, the actual show, CW show Riverdale, now is very different than the comics were, and one thing is they actually delve into the whole sport and kind of behind the scenes drama of boxing. Archie Andrews actually gets into boxing because he failed at football, and it's kind of and like then he goes off to juvie, and so it's a whole thing, and in juvie there's secret fights going on led by the wardens. So anyway, yeah, he gets into boxing even after juvie because of all that, and that's what he wants to do. And so it's a whole drama between him and his family, for one, about if he should do it and whatnot. And his mom tries to set up an exhibition match, so to try and get him to go the military route, which you can do it, but then you have to get a education and you have to go in the military for a few years active duty. So anyway, it's a whole thing, but he doesn't want to do that. He wants to just go pro and see how he says, I want to see how far my fists can take me. But Molly Ringwald is his mom, and she's, she doesn't, it takes her a long time to come around. She's not having it. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, to kind of take on the behind the scenes that I'm sure a lot of fighters, and their families have to go through.
Well, yeah, I mean, because nobody wants. I mean, even though no matter how tough your kid is or how skillfully trained,
right,
your kid is, you don't want to see your kid get beaten up and
exactly
stuff like that. And,
yeah, she says I'm not gonna, at first she says I'm not gonna support you being pummeled, and I'm sure that's what a lot of family members say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it could be worse. It could be like the Saturday Night Live chick, Heidi. What's her name? The girl. What's the actress name? I follow her on Instagram. Heidi.
Oh, yeah. I want to say Heidi Klum, but that's totally not it.
Yeah, I am taking my kids to my sisters. I am not doing this anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the girlfriend, the boxer's girlfriend in every movie ever.
Oh yeah, and she's funny in other bits.
Yeah,
too. I mean, matter of fact, she was also in. She was in that. What was the name of that movie with where Melissa McCarthy goes to college?
Not Bad Teacher.
Yeah,
thing. But yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. And she's like she
plays like her roommate, and she has like Christina Aguilera is like her cousin.
Oh wow, yeah, no, I don't. I'm not gonna get it, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. It sounds really funny.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and she's. Oh yeah, man. As a matter of fact, did you see the one episode when she was that character and with Matt Damon came on as the boxer? He's like, "Hey, look."
Yeah. I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, wait a minute. She keeps talking about how she has a husband. It's like, where is the boyfriend? Where's the husband?
Where's the actual husband? Yeah. So he comes on and plays that role. That sounds pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Of course. Of course, in real life, the husband be like, "Hey, bitch, shut the fuck up! My boxing is putting food on the table."
Yeah, but still, all it takes is two black eyes and and blood coming out of the face, and she's still in her right to go.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, man. Yeah. Also, speaking of Saturday Night Live, wanted to get your take on this because Saturday Night Live is going to be starting up soon.
Yes.
Eddie Murphy is going to be hosting, I think, in November.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What do you think about Eddie Murphy coming back to Saturday Night Live hosting?
Yeah, I like it. I like the idea, but I do, maybe I've been missing things, but I do think he's been out of the spotlight too long. Like, it does seem kind of
out of the spotlight, but he hasn't. Well, I mean, he's got like a movie on Netflix that's coming out.
Oh yeah, I think I heard about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's also got he's actually doing a Netflix comedy special too. He's getting back into comedy.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and that's that's a little. Well, it's gonna be interesting to see. Like, does he? Can he still perform stand up like he used to?
Exactly.
Because it's a different world,
and especially at a Netflix special, like that's there's a whole it's a whole different world now. It's a whole different ball game.
Netflix, you can still do raunchy shit and all.
True, but I'm just saying, like, there's more. I don't know. I don't want to say like professional people, but there is more. There are more comedy pros that are doing that.
Yeah, more competition.
Right. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Because like I saw Bill Burr's comedy special this morning actually, and his new one, Paper Tiger, and he fucking killed it.
Nice. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Bill Burr. He always delivers, and
right. Indeed.
Yeah, he always fucking kills, and I'm still waiting on Ali Wong for another one.
Right. Yeah. I heard. Yeah. I heard hers was was explosive.
The first two ones she did were great. In fact, for the second one, I try to have my mom and my brother watch it, and like I think like 15 minutes into it, they were already tapping out. They're like, this is too much. We want to watch something else. I'm like, it's only been on for 15 minutes. You're already tapping out.
They don't have the long game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, Eddie Murphy. I mean, if you look. I mean, have you ever watched his comedy specials? His two comedy specials?
Yeah, I remember them, but I don't really.
Yeah, I mean, he was funny as hell. He was also funny on Saturday Night Live. The I am Gumby, damn it.
Right, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and also one of my favorite jokes he did was the one he did on Bill Cosby on one of his the last one he did, and he said he was talking to Richard Pryor because Bill Cosby was talking about how like his son had seen him do comedy and said that he was saying motherfucker and all this stuff, and he goes, yeah, man, Bill was kind of giving me some problems about me swearing and stuff, and Richard goes, well, are they coming to see you? Yes. Are you getting a check? Yes. Well, then I would tell Bill to have a Coke and a smile.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how, and that's kind of how like I take how people should be. Like if you're getting a check, and people are still like hating on you, you should tell them like, hey, look, I'm getting a check. You may not like what I do, but you know what I'm doing is art. I'm getting a check for it. I'm feeding my family. So go have a Coke and a smile.
Right. Hey, pass me another beer.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing about that I would say is that not everything is okay just because it's making money. Like that's the other thing. I think this might be where we disagree, but like, I don't know. I don't think that just because you're making money, you're also contributing, something to like the broader culture and this and that. And I don't know if you're doing something that's like really, it's like really like bringing impressionable kids into something dangerous or whatever, then I don't know, stuff like that. Then it's like just because you're getting a check and it's sanctioned by someone, in my mind doesn't mean it's necessarily good.
No, actually, I kind of agree with you on that. Like for example, like people talking about the Disney remakes, and like Disney is remaking their animated movies, and it's people are like Disney is bankrupt. No, not like financially bankrupt, but they say creatively bankrupt. It's like it's just like it's like they're really trying to tell. Like you remember when they come out with their direct to video sequels of their best films.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, like Mulan 2 or Lion King 1.5.
Yes,
And
yes.
you know, and you see all that, and you say like, oh, they're just trying to get in on a quick buck, and they're making money and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And now when they're doing their remakes of their best animated films, it's like they're basically just telling you like, yeah, we don't really care. We're rich. Fuck you.
Yeah, or we don't have any ideas anymore, or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
It's like, well, we're still making money hand over fist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. See, that's what I said. You know, that doesn't mean it's good. In fact, it means you're declining. Like really, you know. Though I am excited to see The Lion King. I think that's going to be the exception to the rule. But
yeah, I also think that the Mulan remake could be the exception too, because I saw the trailer for it. It looks, you know, me being the kung fu freak, you know, it's like, oh, okay, you know, this looks good.
I mean, if they do it right, not if they don't, you know, if they phone it in.
Yeah, I don't
which
think
which is what we've been talking about, you know, that like some of these other things, they're definitely phoning it in.
The Aladdin one was okay. You know, the Aladdin remake was okay.
Oh, so you already saw
that. And also, well, on the Disney live stream, their live stream channel, they're bringing back High School Musical. Yeah, it's going to be a series.
I was not much of a fan of that. You know, believe it or not, I was not much of a fan of that. You know, when it came out, so I'm sure I'm not going to be a fan of the remake.
So you won't be singing along to the songs and stuff like that.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it also reminds me
not that stereotypical. Even though I like Glee, you know, that's a whole other.
Yeah, I also think back to that episode of the first episode of Modern Family.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the first episode of Modern Family where the dad, he's like, yeah, I'm cool with him. I know all the songs to High School Musical, and he's saying we're all in this together. And the kids are just like, stop it, please stop.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also they're also on the live stream. They're bringing back Lizzie McGuire.
Oh,
yeah. So Hilary Duff is back as Lizzie McGuire. She's going to be.
She's going to do it. Oh.
Yeah, and she said, in case you're wondering,
it's been a long time.
Yeah, in case you're wondering, well, I don't know too much of the storyline, but yes, it's going to be Lizzie grown up, and she's still going to have the little animated Lizzie McGuire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's going to be a little interesting, you know, but it's going to be like, you know, an older Lizzie McGuire. Like, is she going to have kids?
I know, yeah. Sometimes those things really, really don't work. Like, you know, if their whole magic was that they were a kid or a teen, you know, for the series, you know, it's like that you know, that adorable factor, that like whimsy factor, you know, that you know, that can't translate to them being an adult. You know?
Yeah, I like Hilary Duff. You know, she was cool. I mean, I liked her older sister more. Yeah, I mean, her older sister was the one I wanted to fuck the most, and also I was more of a Lindsay fan, and I wanted to fuck Lindsay more. I don't know. What about you? Were you a Lindsay fan or a Hillary fan?
Well, you know, I didn't want to fuck them, but yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess I liked Lindsay, but I really didn't follow it that much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. Once again, Disney. Once again, trying to make a quick buck.
So yeah, I can see what you mean about being creatively bankrupt, you know, and like, you know, there's a lot they could do. There really is a lot they could do, and they used to have no shortage of ideas. You know what I mean? But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they're always going to come out with some. I mean, I'm sure they'll come out with some new stuff for films and stuff, and plus they got the Marvel movies, you know, and stuff. But
also that's a whole other thing. That's like its own thing that they just glommed onto, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, Disney does have the rights to Marvel, so
right.
I mean, but in a way, it's going to be hypocritical because it's like, oh, okay, you can do a remake of all your old shit, but you you won't do a Punisher film, or you won't do a you won't do a Daredevil movie. Yeah, it's like, again, it's one of those times where you're just like, you know what, fuck you, Disney.
Yeah.
Yes. And as I mentioned, this is a good time to transition to the Summer of Batman. Yep. And of course, next week we're going to be doing a special edition episode of the Summer of Batman. We're going to be doing all things Batman and comic book related, just like we did with the superhero edition show a couple of years back.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. And just like I promised for the next episode, we're going to be talking about the song that was left off the Batman soundtrack by Prince, called "Dance with the Devil." And actually, I sent you that that song on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, we both listened to the song. Yeah, I mean, it was really good. It's an extended version, like 7 minutes, 7.5, something like that.
No, it's not extended.
Well, yeah, it's like 7 minutes long.
Well, yeah, it's a 7-minute long song, but it's like, but the thing is, it's a very haunting song.
Yes, yeah. I noticed that. It's like it starts off with this like. It takes a while to get to the like the beginning, and then it's like the whole time it's like haunting is a good word. It's very like it's the type of thing.
Yeah, and of course that comes from the famous Joker line in the '89 Batman film "Dance with the Devil" by the Pale Moonlight. Yeah, and I heard about this song, and I heard it on YouTube like a few years back, and I just remember thinking like, wow, this is a real good song. And of course, Prince left it off there because he left the song off the soundtrack because it's two different stories. One is because Prince thought that the song was too dark.
Oh.
Yeah, and the others say it was
on a major motion picture soundtrack.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other is because the producers thought that the song was too dark. And of course, we all know that in my review of the Batman soundtrack, there are songs that are for Batman and songs are for the Joker. It was a concept album.
Right.
And this is definitely a Joker song,
Right.
I mean, this is like the darkest Joker song like ever. And
well, I think it was more haunting than dark. I mean, in my opinion, like it's I don't know. I guess you're gonna kind of like argue about that, but like there's a slight difference there, and like I think it was really haunting, kind of melodic, but dark, I'm not sure, so I guess I'd be more inclined to believe that it was actually the producers. Also just because like trying to think of myself as an artist, I would think if I put so much effort into that song, and so so much of my time, and so much and probably so much of my creative experience into that song, I'm not going to want to take it off of the motion picture album.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, because the thing is also like Princess has a lot of like unreleased material and stuff like that you can find on YouTube and some on Spotify. Like, I mean, there's a lot. Like, well, of course, now we have the reissue of the Purple Rain soundtrack, but on the special edition of the Purple Rain soundtrack, there was a lot of songs that he left off there that are now on the special edition album, Possessed and Electric Intercourse and the piano version of that that you hear at the end of Computer Blue and stuff.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, just called Father's Song. And I was gonna say, oh yeah, and also, Prince, along with Michael Jackson and, and also with Tupac and Biggie, like, it's like they're just like they're almost like perfectionists. It's like, yeah, it's like they're artists. They, like when they're doing an album, like they'll record like maybe 50 or 60 different songs, and then it's like you only get the ones that just make the cut. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess it is different once once you produced 100 or hundreds of songs and whatever, and like I guess yeah, it is different to think about oh well, I know that a third of what I do is not going to get released, like that's something I can't relate to, but yeah, I guess that is true that after a certain point there is like there might be like, oh yeah, I know that there's tons of what I do is not going to get released, and and it has, and in that case it has to be good, it has to be the best.
Well, yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of songs that that Michael Jackson did for the Thriller and Off the Wall album that Quincy Jones had to leave off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and some of them are actually pretty damn good songs too.
Yeah,
and and with Dance with the Devil, it's I could tell like this was the song I think. Yeah, no, I know this was gonna be the song that was gonna be like on the, of course, the scene where Batman goes into the cathedral and tries to rescue Vicky Vale from the Joker, and he has that fight scene with the goon and one of Joker's with Joker's goons, and of course we all know in the movie, the theatrical movie, we hear the the Waltz of Death, which is on the other Batman soundtrack. There were two soundtracks. There's the one with Danny Elfman's, the classical music, and you hear the Batman theme song, and there's one that's called the Waltz of Death. The remember that scene?
Yeah,
and it's like when you hear Dance with the Devil, it's like, oh, now this should have been in that scene, because like Batman's fighting this guy who's kicking his ass, and I mean, of course, it'd be hard to explain, the Joker doing a waltz to waltzing Vicky Vale to that song, even though we hear like sound bits from that from the scene in that song. Like when
I was about to say there's like these weird sound bites throughout it, but yeah, I guess now that makes sense that that's from the actual movie scene.
Yeah, and like when he's with Vicky Vale and he goes, without you, I just wouldn't want to continue, and then he because he has like he's holding Vicky hostage with the gun, and then he fires off the gun, and it turns out to be like a toy gun. It's like, it's like at that, and I remember looking at one of the comments on YouTube during that scene. It's like, one of them said like, okay, at that point, Vicky should have just kicked him in the balls, kneed him in the balls, and try to get away.
Right.
Yeah, but then again, it's like, where's she gonna run to? Because the stairs were destroyed by the bell when the Joker like used his like acid to take the bell, destroy the bell, destroy the stairs, and almost killed Batman in the process.
Yeah.
And but it's like that song would have fit that scene perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Yeah, and it really would have made the scene much darker. It would have made the scene much darker. It's like, ooh, very haunting. Instead of the whole classical music, it's like, when you look, when I look back at it, it's like, the classical music doesn't really fit into that scene,
or it kind of takes away from the whole mood they're trying to create. It takes away from the haunting, like, dark side of it. If it's just just classical, just strings and violins and all that.
Yeah, and also, just like I promised, I have two stories, good stories surrounding this song, and one of them involves K-Dog. Here's the first one. I remember I was really obsessed with this song. Again, Asperger's. When you have Asperger's, you get obsessed with certain things. And I'm one of those people with Asperger's. When I listen to a song, I sort of get obsessed with it and stuff like that. And I remember one night, I woke up in the middle of the night, and also that same night I watched an episode of American Horror Story.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, and I'm in the dark, and I'm like, oh, okay, I got nothing to do here, and I went on my Kindle, and I was like, you know what, when I go on YouTube, why don't I listen to the song?
Okay.
And as I'm listening to the song, and as the song is playing, and I realize, wait a minute, it's like I'm in the dark, I have little light other than the light from my Kindle, and I'm like, oh shit, I just scared myself. Yeah, I was like, oh shit, I'm in the dark. I'm listening to a Prince song about devils and it's haunting. It's like I accidentally scared myself.
Yeah. I mean, I bet that type of thing happened too.
Oh, really? What were you listening to?
Well, no, so
like a Meatloaf song or something? Bad out of hell?
Oh yeah, no. I think it's happened with the song too, but I can't really think of that. The one thing I can think of right now is actually, believe it or not, a book. I was reading this this kind of scary book, and late at night also, and this is when I was in this house in California, and the top of the whole second story was the roof, and so the roof went like this, and anyway, so I was here, I was at the scariest part in this book, I'm trying to escape through a dark tunnel onto the beach, and anyway, and like there's these these pursuers behind them, and one of them might be a monster, and anyway, I hear this scraping on this wall right next to me. I'm like, oh shit, what's going on? And like I literally hear it the whole time, and I had to be like, am I making this up? But I'm not making this up. It was like, oh, yeah, it creeped me the fuck out. And anyway, it turns out there was birds nesting under the tiles of the roof and whatever. But like there is literally bird scratchings while I was reading about them trying to escape through this tunnel, and clawed creatures coming after them.
Can't sleep. Birds will eat me.
Exactly.
Can't sleep.
Birds will eat me. Yeah, so that's my scared myself story.
Yeah, and let's see, another story is this is what happened when you and I, all three of us, you, me, and K-Dog, we had just done a show and we were editing it. And as I was editing the episode and uploading it on YouTube, I said, hey, I was talking about the Prince song, and I said, hey, listen, why I'll let you listen to this, because sometimes we would listen to music, and stuff.
Yeah.
And he listened to it, and he was like, "Oh, this is depressing." He found it depressing. I'm like, I get it if you're scared, but how do you find a song depressing? It's like, well, the subject matter, they're talking about devil and have no, and all that stuff, and
yeah, that's funny. I guess I could see that, but I would have never thought of that.
Yeah, but what do you think overall about the song?
Right. Yeah. So, like I said, I think I don't think it's necessarily as dark. Like I did think it was more like hypnotic and haunting. And I don't think it was depressing either. I thought it was just kind of, it was low key and haunting. And
keep in mind it's 1989. He was doing the song like 88, 89. So it's like goth music wasn't really as big as it was.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. So for back then, it probably was. But like, yeah, now, nowadays there's goth, there's emo, or whatever. And it's like yeah, it seems more like that. I guess it was kind of like that before its time, and yeah, it's kind of nice. I guess it's like where it's kind of nice, but it leaves you uneasy. That's kind of my take on it. And I'm less I don't know. I'm less I don't know. I'm less like susceptible to the whole thing of the whole aspect of the devil. Like that's just a kind of word or plot to use, but it's more like just the feeling of the song. You know what I mean? And the feeling is like haunting, melodic, down key, and that type of thing. So yeah, I mean. Yeah, I actually really liked it. Again, if it was done today, I think it would be like a pretty big song. It would win awards.
Well, maybe not. Because it's like it's Prince, and also, if it were done,
I mean, it's definitely out of his character. I guess there's that too. It's out of his character as Prince.
Yeah, and also like Prince. He was. Well, as I mentioned before in the last episode, we talked about the Batman soundtrack, and talked about how the Love Sexy album was a flop.
Yeah,
the Black album he was doing, the one that he said that he was going to come out with that, but then of course it got scraped because it was it was dark. He said it was dark. It was too dark, and
he or the producers.
Well, no. He actually said that he did a lot of dark songs, and he said he felt it was too dark.
Okay.
And then he came out with he abandoned that and did Love Sexy.
Right.
And of course, eventually that went up being a commercial flop.
Right.
And and plus Prince, like years later, he would devote himself as a Jehovah's Witness, and he was like certain songs he didn't.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't do, or certain material, because of his religion.
Right. Our friend Jabari would be able to talk to that.
Oh yeah. Wait, Jabari is a Jehovah's Witness?
You didn't know this? Yeah, no. He was raised as Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, I gotta talk to him about that.
Yeah.
but and it's like today, I think if Prince were to, if he came out with that song today, I'm pretty sure being the Jehovah's Witnesses, he'd be like, I don't do that song. I will not perform that song anymore. That's against my religious views now. And
right.
And the thing is, as I mentioned before, it's with the album, it's like among hardcore Prince fans, it's great. I mean, it was another hit for Prince, in the mainstream wise, but he still had those critics where it was like, well, it's not another Purple Rain, and it's like, oh, he's still doing the same old shit, the same old R&B, like like the same old funk and rock and thing. And mind you, at this time, as I said, in the last episode too, R&B music had really changed. There was going into the New Jack Swing with Teddy Riley and Bobby Brown, and Janet Jackson was changing her sound as well.
Yeah.
And
I was about to say that sometimes when you I'm also one that says you should change with the times, blah blah. But sometimes when you find the winning formula, a lot of people say when you find the winning formula, stick with it.
Well, yeah, exactly. In fact, Prince didn't have a number one. When he came out with the Diamonds and Pearls album in '91, I mean that was really considered like his song on there, Cream, one of the singles, that was like his last number one song. I mean, he would do other songs, like Seven and other songs and all that, but it was, and also The Most Beautiful Girl in the World. But it was like it never reached those songs never reached number one. They'd be like in the top 10 or top 5.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It was like even when Prince did change, it was still always the matter of, well, it's not a Purple Rain, or it's not this, it's even when he tried to be a little more R&B, it was just like but that's the thing, it was like I also mentioned this before in the last episode. Prince was the type of person that was like, okay, I don't it's like I'm always the person that's focused on doing what I'm doing now. It's like okay, that's good what I did in the past. Yeah, Purple Rain, Dirty Mind, 1999, Around the World, and Sign of the Times. But it's like, I'm focused. I'm more focused on what I'm doing now.
Right, and you know, I don't necessarily like this. I don't. But you know, I was talking with another friend, and it's like, pop music is about what's coming out now. Pop music is about what's happening now. What's the next big thing? It's you know, unfortunately there's not a lot of room to coast on, you know, even if it's like a very very good song. You know, as you know, eventually, you know, it just falls out, you know, for a while until there's a comeback, you know, a decade later. But like, you know, if there's a comeback of that song a decade later, that's a whole different thing. But eventually that one song will fall out, and it's like, you know, what are you doing now? What are you doing lately? You know, so like, you know, so like, yeah, I think like Break Free is one of Ariana Grande's, you know, better ones, but you don't hear that as much lately. Maybe you'll hear it, you know, in another few years, but you know,
well, because she's always coming out with new material.
Exactly, yeah. True. But anyway.
But yeah, so it's like, but the thing is, it's you know, Prince now is like timeless, and even some people will look back on the Batman soundtrack. You know, they'll be like, "Oh, it's a really good album." I mean, like I said, it really did kind of save his career because like after Love Sexy Tour, you know, the Love Sexy Tour and the Love Sexy album, you know, it was a flop, and Warner Brothers were like, because they had a record company and movie company at the time, they said like, hey, listen, unless you get another #1 hit, we're not going to let you do another movie or nothing. And of course, that eventually led to Graffiti Bridge, which turned out to be a bad sequel to Purple Rain, and even the soundtrack was bad, even though there was some good songs on there.
Right.
So it was like, you know, so he went through a 2-year period where it was like, oh, I have a hit, and then I have a miss, and then, you know, and then it was, you know, Diamonds and Pearls. Oh, I'm back. And then afterwards, it was kind of like, glow, coasting around. But then, of course, that led to the problems with his record label and the, you know, putting Slave on his face and changing to a symbol and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But nowadays, now like Prince really is timeless, you know.
Yeah.
And I was saying this even when he was, you know, even when he was still putting out music when he was alive, and like maybe the last 8 years of his life, you know, it was like, well, look, you know, the guy is timeless. He's won his awards. He's got his music, you know, it's like, he's at a point now where it's like, okay, you know, he's just doing music because he loves it. You know, it won't be like, I think even he knew it wasn't going to be like Purple Rain.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be. That's the other thing. It really doesn't have to be. But yeah, when you're timeless like that, it doesn't have to be.
It's also a matter of like, well, when your time is up, your time is up. And also he was independent by that time too.
Right.
You know, it's like, he's like, hey, I can do what I want now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And good song, and hope you guys check it out, and stay tuned for next week, 12:30 on Tuesday. We're going to be doing the Summer of Batman, and going to have a lot of good debates and conversations about comic book movies and superheroes and all that.
Yep.
Special edition episode, and also stay tuned for this Friday at 7:30 for the Beer and Brawl Show, the best of K1 fights and highlights.
Yep, watch it on Facebook.
Yep, facebook.com, which will eventually be changing to Bloody Knuckles on Facebook. We're going to be changing that in October.
Okay.
And also World Outside the Ring on Wednesday.
What? Oh, yes. Yep. Catch my World Outside the Ring tomorrow and every Wednesday.
Yeah, tomorrow and every Wednesday.
All right.
So from Beantown
to your town.
Yeah, Beantown to your town. Yeah.
Beantown, Beatdown.
Matthew Burris.
Gabe Chalmers.
Go Patriots!
Woo!
All right.